Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about forest fires. 1910 was a very bad year for forest fires, and it included the largest forest fire in U.S. history. March of 1910 was the warmest March on record in the United States, with an average daily maximum temperature of 65 degrees. The average temperature that month was about 11 degrees above normal. 52% of days during March 1910 were above 65 degrees Fahrenheit. This is nearly double the average. And the percent of cold nights during March of 1910 was the lowest on record. Only 6% of nights got below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 1/3 of average. March of 1910 brought very warm days and very warm nights, which led to the winter snows melting very early. And not surprisingly, this led to massive forest fires later in the year. October 23, 1910, Soldiers to Fight Fires. The news of the week from Winnipeg, Manitoba shows that in the Great American Canadian Forest Fires that swept the Northwest, 1,000 persons have lost their lives. 2,000 are missing, 5,000 have been rendered homeless. A stretch of 85 miles of country has been laid waste. Wikipedia says that on October 7, 1910, a forest fire raged out of control across Lake of the Woods County, Minnesota, leveling everything in its path. There was a tremendous heat wave going on at that time. On October 11, 1910, it was 100 degrees at Forestburg, South Dakota. That was 30 degrees warmer than today. There's only been 3 times when the Midwest has gotten over 100 degrees this late in the year, and that was in 1910, 1920, and last time was in 1947. So March of 1910 was the warmest on record, and October of 1910 also had record heat, so it was a very long, warm, dry spell. And in the middle of that period during August was the largest forest fire in U.S. history. On August 20th and 21st, 1910, 3 million acres burned up along the Idaho-Montana border, and most of that burn acreage occurred in just over 6 hours. To put that in perspective, the burn area in 1910 over 6 hours was about equal to all of the burn acreage in California so far this year. I live pretty close to the Mullen Fire, which is currently burning in Wyoming and Colorado. It is officially the largest forest fire in Colorado history, but its size is only 1/20th of the 1910 fire. The fires of 1910 were massive, and after 1910, burn acreage in the United States greatly increased to a peak around 1930. But over the last 60 years, burn acreage in the United States has been much lower than it used to be prior to 60 years ago. There's been a small trend upward since 2006, but it hasn't been very much. And according to the U.S. government, about 10 times as much burn acreage occurred every year during the pre-industrial period from the years 1500 to 1800. In other words, burn acreage in the United States is down 90% from what it was when carbon dioxide levels were below 300 parts per million. Neither science nor history support any of the claims that forest fires are getting worse in the United States. Over the long term, the trend in forest fires in the United States is clearly downwards. In 1992, the New York Times reported that scientists found that major conflagrations of fire sweeping across many mountain ranges in California and the Southwest were long a common feature, occurring at least twice a decade and apparently linked to oceanic currents much further south, the so-called La Nina events that often result in droughts. Finding this synchronicity in fire events was a big surprise to us, he said. It tells me that western landscapes in pre-settlement era were very smoky places. If New York Times writers actually read their own paper, they would know better than to think that fires are getting worse. But apparently that's not the case. We're having pretty bad forest fires again this year, and we're also having a La Nina. This is not a coincidence. At the vice presidential debate the other night, the moderator casually threw out misinformation and declared it to be scientific fact.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Pence. Once again, you've provided the perfect segue to a new topic, which is climate change. And Vice President Pence, I'd like to pose the first question to you. This year, we've seen record-setting hurricanes in the South. Another one, Hurricane Delta, is now threatening the Gulf. And we have seen record-setting wildfires in the West. Do you believe, as the scientific community has concluded, that man-made climate change has made wildfires bigger, hotter, and more deadly, and have made hurricanes wetter, slower, and more damaging.
Not a single thing she said was true, and she said it very confidently and smugly, which has become the modus operandi for the mainstream media. Democrats imagine that their views are based on science when in fact they are immersed in Dark Ages level superstition. Toto and Kyrie understand a lot more about science and nature than Joe Biden and Kamala Harris do. You can visit Toto and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.